and it's the first one. Do not separate. What? The camera was telling me something, and it was too small, and I didn't see what it said. But hopefully it's working. We're in the midst of Fur Rendezvous, which I don't know if any of you have been here before, but I saw my granddaughter waving at the sled dogs as they were running down the street and applauding. Wow. So my son actually got up and went down there for that. Took my granddaughter. So that's pretty cool. But what I would usually go and do is look at the snow sculptures. Sculptors are the ones doing it, but sculptures are the results. And usually by the time I go look, they're all melted. But I don't think that's going to happen this year for some reason. Not this week anyway.
Maybe it's been sunny.
But I didn't have anybody that wanted to go. I asked my daughter, let's go see that, and she said, no. So that was the end of that. But it's a fun time of year, I suppose. Mostly, I think it's everybody trying to get used to the idea that it's cold out. And let's pretend that that doesn't bother us. So they do all kinds of crazy things. Well, we're at the point in the course. This is obviously following staying as close to the surface as possible. The weak fish principle, if you might call it that. I don't think that means that weak fish tend to stay close to the surface. I don't know. They could drop down. But in any case, we're just quickly going across, 2,000 years or more already. But we're looking at the moderns today. So what brought on the modern period? What's so significant about the modern period? And the two main stars at the very beginning are Descartes and Hobbes. So those are the two I'll try to, and even though I'm just focusing on Descartes today, I'm thinking of Hobbes and Descartes as two that are really kind of co-joined, so to speak, together. So Hobbes is the oldest of the two of them by, 8 years. He was born in 1588. And Descartes, which oddly enough you could just look up by Descartes. And he was born 1596, so 8 years later. But notice he dies much, much earlier than Hobbes, 20-something years earlier. So Hobbes ends up living into his 90s, I think. Double check. I don't know why I try to use my memory anymore. It's all here. 91. And I know he was playing tennis when he was in his 90s. So what's funny is Hobbes is famous for the line that life is nasty, brutish, something in short, all horrible things. And yet he lives 91 years and has a pension and plays tennis. So it's just kind of the opposite of the whole idea of what he says life is like. And Descartes' most famous line is, oh, that was my joke. Yeah, I don't think Descartes ever said that. I don't think he spoke English even, but no, his most famous line is, I think, therefore I am. Yes, I think pretty much everyone knows that one, even if only because of jokes. You know, he goes into a bar, sits down, someone asks him a question, he says, I don't think, and poof, he's gone. You know? Weird things come up with that. But why is that so significant? So if we play the two of them off of one another, Hobbes was born in 88, which was the year that the Spanish Armada was off the coast of England, planning to attack England, and Elizabeth on her white horse, running back and forth like, woo, I'll fight them all off, you know, whatever. And actually, Sir Walter Raleigh, I believe, was the one who sailed there was a storm, and so the Armada gathered itself all together for protection. And Sir Walter Raleigh, famous for cigarettes and tobacco, sailed a fire ship. I think there were like 4 fire ships. You know, they set 4 of their ships on fire and sailed them directly into the Armada and jumped ship just before they crashed in, and set basically the whole Armada on fire, which sunk. And so this incredibly expensive Spanish fleet, with all its forces, were about ready to attack England, and was destroyed. And I don't know if there were many survivors. Or yeah, you could look that up. But it kind of destroyed the wealth of Spain all in one swell swoop, if you even say that, you know, fell swoop, but swell swoop, you know. It's like when the fit hit the Sean, you know what you're really thinking, you know, instead of, but you can't say those words, you know. So Hobbes says he was born of fear, because he was born early, and his mother apparently was scared to death of the Spanish, you know, attacking, and so she literally apparently had him early. So he was born a twin of fear, was his line. And he spent his whole life getting in trouble wherever he was and fleeing from it, and waiting long enough that actually he got in trouble where he was now and fleeing back and forth. So he traveled back and forth quite a lot. Bless you. Bless you. Gesundheit, gute Zdrowie, a votre santé. I don't know which one of them works, but you could use all of them. Even if you don't believe in them, they work.
Say it again. What were they?
Votre santé is to your health in French. Gute Zdrowie means be healthy, po-ruski. Gesundheit, we all know that one for some reason, and that's German. And that's height is high and gesund is health, so high health or whatever. Okay, so yes.
I wanted to ask a question. So why do we use the word attend in English to like paying attention to someone? When it sounds like it's from French.
Attendez, yeah.
To wait. Why do we use it in that way? It doesn't make sense. Even my French teacher, she would say attend, like telling us to listen to her. It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah. We say attention, you know, in the army, you know, which just means whoa. Now what?
I guess in that context, it makes sense.
Yeah, well, all those words have multiple contexts, as we will see. That's really quite, language is not very precise, unless you use precising language, in which case, use very specific, we mean by this law that any use of this particular pill in the context of, of 2 or 3 blocks of a school would get you arrested under the, who knows? They're trying to be very precise so that in court you could actually know for sure whether someone's guilty or not. Going back to Descartes, it's always puzzled me because really one of the things that Descartes was most famous for in his lifetime was his mathematical developments, his mathematics, his coordinate geometry, which is done on a cart, including maps. So when we think of today, we think of a map, you think of that grid that's on them all the time, usually. Even when Google Earth first comes up, the first thing you see before everything fills in are all the grids, that go off, seemingly ad infinitum, right? But Descartes invented those, and the story goes that he was lying in bed, which he loved to do.
Same.
Yes?
I
Oh,
love
oh, you
that.
do, so you can, yeah. But in any case, he was lying in bed and he was looking up and there was a fly walking around on the ceiling. And it occurred to him that if he had grid lines on the ceiling, he could map the route of the fly. And so he came up with these grid lines and the XY axis. So if you're familiar, and I thought it odd when I came in, the previous class had left that on the board, and I thought, well, they knew I was going to talk about Descartes, so they had basically, the X and Y axis up on the wall. Funny, but the thing is, Descartes literally means the map, and his first name is René, and so his name is René Descartes. He was born in La Haye. I should switch to Descartes since we're talking. Notice I'm going back and forth between them. Born in La Haye, which today is called Descartes. Although if you go visit, there's hardly anything there about Descartes. It's just like nobody cares. There's statues of Descartes in other places, like at the Louvre, for example, the museum in Paris. His body is in one museum and his head is in another.
What?
Because the head and the body got separate when so he loved sleeping in all his life. He was invited to Sweden by Queen Christina. Didn't really want to go, but he finally realized, she's a queen, so you go. And within a year, he was dead. And they think it's because Sweden is so cold. But worse, Queen Christina wanted to see him every morning at 5 a.m. because that's when she had time to draw tangents and things. And so he got up every morning in order to go and work with the Queen when he's used to sleeping in, and but in any case, he ended up getting pneumonia, and one of his friends had pneumonia, and he tended his friend and got pneumonia himself. Tends to happen if it's viral, right? And so he ended up dying in Sweden, and France wanted his body back, and so they did ship it, but in shipping, the head disappeared. Someone stole the head, and it was eventually found, but they never put the two of them back together again. So his body is like in one place, and actually, from what I understand, it's right across the street is the museum where his head is located.
That's strange.
Yeah, especially since part of his philosophy was a mind-body
That's so funny.
separation, and You know, it's like, how does this stuff happen? So I don't know. I did read once though that his father was supposedly called Descartes, but I'm not sure. You know, how does that happen? He was a low-level noble of some sort. But, you know, like the British signing the Magna Carta, right? Carta, you know, the big paper, basically. So I don't know how that works. Maybe it was because his father worked with paper, and so he ended up with the name. This is about the time where you begin seeing people having a second name. Really, it was kind of an invention, that as the cities began keeping better records and trying to understand the nature of the city, and that actually is part of Descartes' leavings to us, really, because what Descartes becomes interested in, famously, has to do with certainty. How do you know stuff? Because in school, he was in a Jesuit school. Notice, by the way, he does not become a priest or a theologian. So he and Hobbes both at this time now go to school, but they don't graduate and become priests or monks or anything of that sort. They can continue on as secular individuals despite having gotten the education. But his Jesuit teachers were on multiple sides of arguments. And it seemed like both sides were wishy and washy. They weren't really that absolute. And part of the problem was, after Thomas Aquinas, you have open season. You're allowed to study Aristotle because Aquinas figured out a way to make it legal for you to read Aristotle, even though the dogma was following Plato and Augustine, right? So all the critiques that you could find in Aristotle that made you uncomfortable in studying Aristotle, he fixed by giving you these options. There's different contexts under which you read the text this way, but in other contexts you read it this way. And it looks like they ought to be in conflict, but no, it's a matter of context. Keep your context separate, and you're okay, right? Right? No problem. That's also very confusing. And so you still had theologians taking sides. One of the biggest issues was the nature of existence, ontology. What can actually exist? And William of Ockham is one of the more famous ones. We want that? We'll go. I'll just stick to Wikipedia. Why not? William of Ockham is one of my favorites, by the way, especially because Umberto Eco, an Italian philosopher, author, wrote a book called The Name of the Rose. Anyone heard of it? No? The Name of the Rose? The movie, by the way, had Sean Connery as William of Ockham. Sean Connery? Nobody knows who Sean Connery? Oh, one person knows. Okay. Not that that's important anymore. But in any case, William of Ockham, actually in the movie and in the book, which was actually, of course, a better book than the movie. But the character William is really a postmodernist merge with the detective Sherlock Holmes. So you end up getting kind of a melange or a mix of William of Ockham, but he's rudimentary, does a lot of Sherlock Holmes lines, and has a young partner, etc. You know, so, you know, and he's doing a murder investigation, and it's you know, just like Sherlock Holmes. So